when slavery was over, Marianne and Freeman, they still lived at, um, I'm going to say, the slave master's house. Maybe they were sharecroppers or something like that, but they still stayed there. And my cousin Geraldine said that she, Marianne, she still had a baby. I think his name was Jordan. I think maybe her last child or something like that. You know, he was still, say, an infant or a toddler when slavery was over. But then some of their kids were married. And so, and another thing, um, they had six daughters and nine sons, and all of their daughters married mulatto men. And Freeman, he really didn't like that, because he thought that because they were half white, the men were half white, that he was thinking that maybe their children would want to be white instead of, black, even though, like, a lot of their children were slaves, and then they were, they were free, but anyway, they were slaves, and probably the the um the husbands, they were slaves, because and I'm gonna go into my great grandmother. She was Rachel. That was their child, was Rachel. And my great grandfather, they called him, well, it's Richard King, but they called him Dick King. And he came from Alabama with his the slaves in their kind of caravan. So I think they came from, say, southern Alabama through Mississippi, Louisiana to Texas, and and then the Marianne and her family and Freeman, they came from the north part and came into Texas. So anyway, when Richard, when he came in, he was he was half white, and he was working in this, say, the slave master's house. And he said that, my father said that when he was a young boy, he was probably shining shoes and things like that. And then when say, after dinner, the the men would go into, say, a smoking room, and he would go in there, and they were smoking cigars and drinking brandy, and he was assisting them with, probably, I don't know, like, I don't know, because he was young, so I don't know what he did with the brandy, but maybe he was doing something with the cigars and things like that. But anyway, my dad said that he was listening, and he was saying, the men were saying, in order to have wealth, you have to have land. And so when Richard King died, I think he had over 1,000 acres of land, because of what he heard when they were talking in this room. But Geraldine said that his mother, she was killed by one of the, say, the I'm going to say, the slave mistresses, because she had a a son by um, a slave, one of the slave masters, and I don't know who it was or anything like that. But anyway, she, um, his mother was poisoned by some milk, and I think that he kind of kept that, maybe in, like, in the Bible they say Mary pondered that, and maybe he pondered that, and so um, Freeman always thought that Richard was um, not not as industrious as some of the other men, but he ended up being, say, the superintendent of the schools where his children um, went to school. He had more than 1,000 acres of land, and he had several businesses. I know that he had a cane business, and uh, I should have read more. But when when they had the Depression, Richard King and my um, father's father, they each had businesses, and they employed people and everything during the Depression until they ran out of money. So they did have a like, say, going concerns until the Depression wiped them out. But they didn't stop until they ran out of money. They employed people and everything.